Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to share with the community who's going through everything right now with the repeal that the Asian American community is also impacted when it comes to deportations and the fear of having family separation and dealing with life in secrecy for those who are undocumented. There's 2 million Asian Americans who also live in fear and under that umbrella life. And so in solidarity, I also wanted to share some stories about the Southeast Asian community in particular. Does anyone here know where Cambodia is? Yeah. There was a secret war during the mid-1970s with the Vietnam War, and Cambodia, for many of those it looks like in the audience who know where it is, it's in Southeast Asia next to Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and during that time many refugees were displaced. We are the largest resettlement group in the US history is Southeast Asians due to the Refugee Act of 1980. And coming with that migration is a very large group of people who came here due to war, not very different from Syrian refugees because of foreign policy with the US. And so my family in particular are survivors of genocide and fled during that time as refugees. Fortunately for us, we are legal permanent residents. But other Southeast Asians, known as boat people, or arrived here by boat, are undocumented, and many still have come here since the 1980s and 1990s as undocumented Southeast Asians. And so we share a very common thread with other communities who are impacted by immigration policy that hasn't been passed to protect us or to allow for a road to citizenship. And so for the Cambodian community in particular, not only have we come here as refugees due to genocide and also war during the Vietnam War and secret bombings, since we've been here, there has been a lot of struggle in the different spheres of success. So gaining education, jobs, language barrier, and shared amongst many immigrant groups who arrive in the US is that struggle. And so this is just another point in history where when we were coming to the US during that time of war, the majority of the American public were against that resettlement. The majority of Americans were not with Congress in passing the Refugee Resettlement Act. And so we're in a time in history where we're now, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment as well. And seeing everyone here, and typically in this area with the Women's March and people coming together, it's a great community to be a part of, and I'm proud to be here as a child of immigrants and refugees. Something happening in the Southeast Asian community is deportations. For those who have come here and have not gotten citizenship, they're also vulnerable to deportation as much as any other community. Those who are undocumented, as well as those who, due to the 1996 immigration laws, which is IRA, and APA, who are familiar with it, it's the Illegal Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act of 1996, that has changed the landscape of immigration policy in the US and has allowed for what is considered criminal immigration policies, that for those who even have any type of misdemeanor or criminal record, they're also subject to being exiled and deported. And for the Southeast Asian community, because of the school to prison and now to deportation pipeline, that's something that impacts our community heavily for deportations. There's 16,000 Southeast Asians who have final orders of deportation currently in the US. And of those 16,000 since 1996, there has been, at least to Cambodia, almost 600 deportees, and I was there in Cambodia just this past November for the very first time, and I met with some of those deportees, and some of them have ranged from petty theft because they are not a citizenship, have been put into the immigration courts that turns it into a felony in immigration court, and then they are then deportable because of the 1996 laws. And so something like that has deported a man who has 2 children here, U.S. citizen children. He hasn't seen them for 10 years. And when he served a year in prison because he pled guilty, because if you don't have money, you don't have a good lawyer, you can't get it off your record, he ends up being deported in 2005. It's been a little over 10 years, and he hasn't seen his children. And he's told me that he would have rather just stayed in jail in the US or detained by ICE the whole time, rather than be deported to Cambodia, which is a country he's never even been to before, because he's never able to come back. And he doesn't have the resources to have his family visit him. So for stories from the Cambodian community, deportation is not only a human right violation in many ways because of the, I believe that you're sentenced a second time after you already served. Every single person who's been deported to Southeast Asia has served their time if they have gone through criminal deportation, and they are exiled permanently for life right now. So that's another aspect to immigration deportation that's happening in our community. That's also shared struggles with in terms of DACA recipients who's never been to a country that their parents have brought them from or have little connection to it. We know in our community what that impact looks like since 2002, since these deportations have been happening, and it's devastating. Not only are we refugees who have been struggling in this country since the bombing of our countries, but now many of our family members and community members are deported back to the very countries we fled in the first place. And so I just wanted to share that impact in solidarity with what's going on right now with the Mexican and Latino Chicano community going through the DACA repeal. And as many Americans stood up during that time when Asian Americans, Southeast Asian Americans in particular, found refuge in this country, I hope that we continue to do that today for everyone who's seeking refuge and made the U.S. their home as well. So we're all Americans, and appreciate you being here to support everyone going through this.